In this video, we're going to start getting more into what makes qualitative research different from quantitative research, and that might help you understand also when we should use qualitative research. So, when do we use it? Well, in some cases, it's where we don't know what the heck is going on, and we have to kind of at least develop some plausible story for future research inquiry. We don't even know what questions we should be asking. So that was the case with the Pruno and botulism example in the prisons. Like, we knew we had botulism problems, we knew it might be related to the homebrew in the prison that was being made in the cells, but there were a lot of things about that practice that public health and CDC knew nothing about, so qualitative research was their design. So when you don't really have a clue what's going on, qualitative research might be a good place to start. Also, in some cases, there's an association there. It's backed up by the numbers, or this population is different from this population. Why? Why is not something that can be answered with a number. It might be more abstract or require a story. Also, we may have some ideas for things that we want to do. The research program has identified some things that might work as a solution, but before you try to implement them, you might want to get some feedback from the community. And you can also ask the community, what's going on with these numbers? Why do you think your community is different from this community? So you can actively engage the community in the research process this way. You can also learn things through asking the people who are experiencing the public health problems or engaging in the riskier behavior on why they do it, or why they think something is happening, or how something may be happening. And that will allow the researchers who may not be from that community, or who may only provide one perspective from that community, to be able to better understand other items or missed aspects that previous inquiries, especially quantitative designs, may not have been able to capture. So from a quantitative stats perspective versus a qualitative stats perspective, if you asked a statistician, and you see this, I've done it myself, I'll tell people you have quantitative variables and qualitative variables. So in the stat program, we've got quantitative values. These are numerical. And then we've got qualitative values like eye color, gender, breed of dog, level of education, marital status. But in reality, you could pretty much categorize these only so many different ways. There really are not an infinite number of possibilities for these things. You eventually run out of eye colors and you can say other, you can have a variety of different names or labels, but really it's not as open-ended as whole statements or asking somebody why. So from a qualitative perspective, how and why are what really drive the data. Quantitative people view qualitative variables as like this, and they want to use a stat program. Qualitative researchers are interested in how and why, and they expand these definitions greatly. So there's some major differences. If you ask a quantitative person what qualitative data looks like, they may say something like that. But if you ask a qualitative person what qualitative data look like, they're going to say, well, it's a lot. It could be photographs, it could be stories, it can be narratives. So we're going to get into that a little bit more here in the next. So let's look at how and why. Those are typical kind of starts to some qualitative research questions. So from a qualitative perspective, we're interested in gathering open-ended information. So we will ask how or why. If you're doing a cross-sectional survey and you're wanting to analyze it using a quantitative approach, a t-test or correlation test, you're going to want to stay away from how and why, because people are going to write stuff. From a qualitative perspective, we want them writing stuff, or if we're interviewing them, we want them telling us how or why. This is going to be collected often through a question and answer type format, or if you're the researcher and you don't talk to them, you're going to have to witness, like, how is this person doing this job? Or how are they carrying out this task? Or why are they going there to collect that water instead of somewhere else? And you study it visually from afar. Those are qualitative research type inquiries. There's a lot of information on these slides here. I'm going to give you the slides that you can compare qualitative versus quantitative, but you can see quantitative is how many and when and where, qualitative how and why. So you've got this information on the slides. Again, this whole training program, you can use this link if you wanted to run through their whole training program for the one CEU. And before we go more into the different types of qualitative methods, I want you to know that there are a variety of methods that are out there. There are strict 100% quantitative analyses, and these sometimes happen in even in NIH type research, toxicology, lab research. When you're dealing with humans and trying to figure out why humans do what they do, we're usually more into these areas. And there are some analyses that are strict qualitative analysis. So these are called mono method designs. They're strict qualitative or strict quantitative. But in reality, a lot of research that exists is actually in the realm of mixed model designs, where they may start off with qualitative objectives, but then after collecting some qualitative data, they then make that data quantitative. So you can see all the different scenarios that are out there. Now, moving into which ways mixed methods may work if you're curious. So if you're the ARC and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the Foundation for Healthy Kentucky, and you're funding research, trying to figure out which communities in Appalachia are doing really well and which ones are doing a lot worse based upon the deck of cards that they've been given, there are some communities that look like bright spots. So in this case, we have the research has been done on the quantitative, numbers here. A regression model has been developed that says that higher values denote worse health. So in this case, maybe mortality, the mortality rate. You don't want to be high, and it could be that the mortality rate goes down for these different counties based upon like what we'd expect. And there are some that are below the line that you would expect based off their income or whatever. So they have lower mortality than what you would expect based upon maybe their income and educational attainment. So you might want to study these ones that are really far below the line to figure out why these are bright spots. They're deviants here. They're not normal. Why are they so far off the line? So that asking like why, that's qualitative. And then going to those communities and saying, why are you all able to have lower rates of diabetes or lower rates of this or lower rates of mortality than the other communities? And it might involve some more detailed qualitative analyses with individuals. So these are our bright spots. Another example, here we've got the actual years of potential life loss over the predicted years of life loss. So there's some sort of model that's been done, and you can see how communities do. But for whatever reason, this one, you would think it would be up here closer to the rest of the pack, but this Greene County, Kentucky's got actual years of potential life lost are a lot lower than what it should be given the circumstances they're in. So you would do, now this is quantitative here, but going to that community and asking those questions or studying things online about them, that would be qualitative research. It's open-ended, trying to figure out what's going on and why or how it's happening. And there are other examples. These are positive deviants where the YPLL, years of potential life lost, are better than expected. So you can go to these communities to figure that out. So that is a mixed method type approach. So let's do a quick review. Which of the following does not characterize qualitative research? So which of the following does not characterize qualitative research? Answers of how and why, produces generalizable findings, allows study design flexibility, aims to describe and explain relationships. So study flexibility, qualitative is more flexible than quantitative, understands how and why. Qualitative does a lot more of that. How many is a quantitative question. How and why is qualitative. Aims to describe and explain relationships. I think qualitative does that. Quantitative does as well. But produces generalizable findings. That's probably not so much the case, because qualitative research, you're not able to interview everyone, and randomization is not as common. You can't just sample everyone. So item B is our best response. That's not qualitative research. I think we got one more question here. Given the team that has decided to design a qualitative study, which will your study likely contain? We just said we're probably not able to collect a representative sample, because we just can't do this survey with everyone that we need to sample for a quantitative design, so that's probably not going to work. Testing theories or hypotheses? Maybe, but in some cases, like, we don't even have a hypothesis yet. We need to figure out our hypotheses. Direct contact with study participants? That happens a lot. Yeah, that will happen a lot. It's not always required, but that's more common. Gathering of data by surveys, logs, and forms. You can do some of the pulling it off of log sheets or forms. You can also get some data from surveys, but I would say that the best bet is direct contact with the study participants, and that is the correct answer. So we're going to finish this section here. So this concludes section 2. We're going to move into the third video here in the next presentation.